Hey Ed, so here's my submission for the final. I currently have all of the design patterns in place and working and checked off on the document. So it starts out with a input observer. So you push 1 for a one-player game. So let me say by only showing the one-player game version, you can safely assume that I was not able to get two-player going. Now, that's not to say that I did not think about it. I actually diagrammed it and planned it out, but I had a hell of a time getting the game cycling being circular and constantly working on game over, and I thought that was a little bit more important than two-player, and I finally got game cycling to work. So back to the game. On collision, input observer of the 1 key, the game will start. So I currently have the grid of 55 aliens. They animate and move on the timer. And I also have some awesome collisions going. So I do have bomb versus shield, as you can see. The shields are getting smaller. I have missile versus alien. And when the missile hits the top of the screen, it also animates. So it's that collision pairs with the wall group. So the alien grid also collides with each wall and jumps down. It's going to be harder because when I was debugging this and prototyping, I actually set the sprites for the bombs much bigger just to double check my collisions, and now that I've shrank them back to normal, my aim is very bad, but I also have bomb versus missile going. Let me see if I can actually show that. Probably not. And I also have missile versus UFO. And alien bomb versus the ship. And I'm probably never going to hit that UFO, but I will try. The other cool thing was I got the toggles for the shields to work, and the toggles for the collision boxes to work. And there's the UFO. So on collision, the UFO makes a sound. While it's in flight, it makes a sound, and then it animates on collision as well. The sounds were a little weird to work with at first, but I finally figured that out. It sounded like a drill because the way I was trying to play them, but got that working with my sound manager. Let's see if I can hit it again. Of course not. And then the other collision I have going is the ship versus the walls, or these bumpers that I have down here. So it actually changes the ship state. So no matter how many times I press right, I cannot go off screen. And same thing with the left. The ship state is also working in that if I shoot a missile, sure, if I'm really close to the brick, I can shoot a couple times, but if I'm off to the right and I have room, I can't fire until it's done on its flight path. So the missile collides with the top wall and I can fire again, but in between I can't do much. The other collision pair that I got working and also has animation and sound is the bomb versus the ship. So the ship also has, you start with 3 lives, and the lives are denoted by the number and the number of little ship images in the bottom left corner. I'm using an observer for that, and also the aliens have points. So on collision, the points per alien get updated to the score, and the source I found said, or maybe you mentioned it in class, but the crabs are worth, or octopus is worth 10, crabs are a little bit more narrow, so they're worth 20, and then squids are the most narrow, and they're worth 30. The other collision pair that I have, it's kind of interesting, is the alien grid versus the bottom, and just as a safe point, and the alien grid, or any alien on the grid, I should say, but the bounding box versus the ship. And I decided to make that an automatic game over if they get that low, because even if the ship resets, you're screwed. You're not going to be able to shoot the alien if it's on the same level as you. So, but here's where the collision for the shields should start working with the aliens. So they start sweeping out the shields, and it's per alien, not just the bounding box. The bounding box just works with the collision to update the observers. And the alien grid has a starting delta or speed, and starting speed for the difficulty in terms of how many bombs they drop, like the rate at which they drop the bombs. And each wave gets a little bit faster in base speed and a little bit faster in the rate at which the bombs drop. So the base speed for the next wave isn't crazy, but it is an increase. And then on the game over screen, it was a good stopping point. At game over, it cycles back, and now we are back able to play a one-player game again. So if I press 1, that input observer, so as you kill the aliens, I also have the speed being updated. Not by much, but once you start taking out the whole grid and you get to higher waves, it gets kind of crazy. So, like I said, the reason I didn't get to around to 2 players because I was more concerned about the state of cycling between select to gameplay back to select screen, and I think the problem I had with that was I couldn't find the error because debugging was becoming very cumbersome with how big the system got to be, but I think what I was really doing was relying too much on time events, and it took me about 20-something hours to figure that out, and I finally did a little bit of refactoring for how the game cycles and got it to work. But I wish I had figured that out 2 days ago, because I started a prototype 2-player, and it seemed really cool. The logic behind it seemed like it would definitely work with a little tweaking. Once I got it into code, I just, at work bored, I was just prototyping it on paper, and never got around to it because of the cycles. But the other thing that I did do is I created like a graveyard like we had talked about in class. So what I chose to do for that, I had a couple prototypes of it. I did not like the way that they were shaping up to be, so I refactored it to preload every game object I'm going to need, and then the game basically pulls what it needs from the graveyard, and then the graveyard will actually spit everything back out when it's needed. And then when objects are killed, I actually have it over on the right, I called it the Ghost Manager. As an object is killed, it actually doesn't get removed technically. It does, but it just goes to the graveyard, so it can be pulled off later when something needs it. So all the systems are playing nice together currently, and wow, I'm actually on wave 2, so that's good. Let's see if I can get through wave 2. So my biggest issue was probably the game cycling. At one point I totally broke down. I didn't know where else to look. Debugging became a living nightmare, but finally figured out where some of the problems were, and like I said, it was relying too much on the timer to try to automate everything, and it turned out to work, but I think it could be a little bit better, especially once I got 2-player going. But now we're on wave 3, and you can see that they started to speed up. At their base speed, I mean, is a little bit faster. And they are also dropping bombs at a little bit of a higher rate. At one point I had the bombs dropping at such a fast rate that you basically couldn't survive, so I slowed it down a lot, especially for the demo, because I'm really bad at this game and I was dying every 5 seconds. The other thing I didn't get around to do that I didn't even get to prototype it was but I really wanted to, was the bricks disintegrating on hit. I thought that was really cool in the one demo you showed us. So if I ever feel up to it, I might give that a go after the project's turned in, but let me just make sure I can cycle through one more time. Get one more game over. All the collisions are working. And on death, I actually have the game, whatever you have on screen, I thought it was, so if I were to create another state, so we call the one with the input observers for sprite batches and stuff, debug mode. If it wasn't in debug mode and the game ended, you wouldn't see the boxes, but I also had them turned on. So whatever's on screen when you die, it just kind of pastes it there and leaves it. I thought that looked pretty cool. Thanks for watching.